The last thing I expected to argue with my son about was a fishing boat. Not my health, not retirement, not the family business. A fishing boat. It was an old 23-foot cabin cruiser that had belonged to my father before me. The paint had faded years ago. The engine coughed every time it started, and one of the cabin windows refused to close completely no matter how many times I repaired it. To everyone else, it looked like a rusting pile of scrap. To me, it smelled like every happy memory I'd ever had. My son Ryan looked across the marina and shook his head. "Dad, you haven't taken that thing out in months." "I've been busy." "You've been retired." "Exactly." He laughed. "That's not how retirement works." I smiled without answering. At 68, I'd learned there was no point arguing with people who thought growing older automatically meant growing weaker. Ryan wasn't a bad man. He just spent his entire life believing every problem had a practical solution. Replace old things, sell unused property, move forward. I was the opposite. I believed some things became more valuable simply because they'd survived. My wife, Eleanor, used to tease us about it. She'd stand between us every Thanksgiving pretending to referee. "Frank thinks memories are investments." She'd point at Ryan. "And Ryan thinks spreadsheets are." She wasn't wrong. When Eleanor died of pancreatic cancer 5 years earlier, the house became unbearably quiet. For almost 12 months, I couldn't even walk into our bedroom without expecting to hear her humming while folding laundry. People told me grief faded. They lied. It doesn't fade. It simply changes shape until you learn how to carry it. The boat helped. Every Saturday morning, I'd take it onto Lake Mercer before sunrise. No fishing. Most days I never even cast a line. I'd simply drift with a thermos of coffee while watching mist roll across the water. It was the only place where silence didn't feel lonely. Ryan never understood that. "Dad." He leaned against the dock railing. "You know what you should do." I'm almost afraid to ask. "Sell it." I laughed. "There it is. It's worth more than you think. It's worth exactly what I think." "No." He pulled out his phone. I looked it up. "Of course you did." He showed me listings, restored vintage cabin cruisers, collectors, auctions, numbers with far too many zeros. "You could travel." "I already do." "Where?" I pointed toward the lake. "There." He sighed. "You always do this." "Do what?" "You make everything sentimental." Before I could answer, another voice interrupted. "Dad." My granddaughter Sophie came running down the dock carrying 2 ice cream cones. She was 10 years old, missing one front tooth. Completely fearless, she held out a cone. "I saved chocolate for you." Ryan smiled. "She gets that from Mom." "Nope." I accepted the melting cone. "She gets that from her grandmother." Sophie's face brightened. "Can we take the boat tomorrow?" Ryan answered before I could. "Not until Grandpa fixes the navigation lights." She looked disappointed. "I thought you already fixed them." "So did I admitted. "I'll check them again." It seemed like such an ordinary conversation. Just another summer afternoon beside the water. If someone had told me those broken navigation lights would later become the single most important detail in my life, I'd have laughed. 3 weeks later, I collapsed while trimming hedges in my backyard. I remember reaching for the garden shears. Then nothing. No pain. No warning. Just a strange heaviness spreading through my left arm. The shears slipped from my hand. The trees tilted sideways. The sky folded into darkness. When awareness returned, everything was sound, soft beeping, air flowing through plastic tubing, rubber soles against polished floors. Somewhere nearby, a machine clicked every few seconds with perfect rhythm. Hospital. I tried opening my eyes. Nothing. I tried lifting my hand. Nothing. My body no longer belonged to me. Panic rose like a tidal wave. I forced it back down. One breath at a time, someone spoke. The stroke affected motor function more than expected. Another voice answered. His hearing may still be intact. May. I wanted to scream. Not May. Definitely, I heard every word, every cough, every footstep, every zipper, every whisper. But I couldn't tell anyone. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time didn't exist anymore. People came. Doctors, nurses, neighbors, a pastor. My daughter Emily cried quietly while holding my hand. She kept apologizing for things that didn't need apologizing for. Then she left. The room became silent again. At least, I thought it had. The door opened softly. 2 familiar footsteps entered. Ryan and his wife Melissa. Neither of them realized I was awake. I heard Melissa exhale. "How bad is it?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. I recognized that silence. It was the same silence he used whenever he was calculating something. Finally he spoke. "If he doesn't recover," another pause, "everything changes." Melissa whispered, "Don't." I wasn't finished. The room became perfectly still. Then my son leaned closer to my bed. His voice dropped so low that only someone lying exactly where I was could have heard it. The old man's insurance. A pause. Pays out double. Another pause. If it looks like an accident. Every instinct inside me exploded. I wanted to grab him, to open my eyes, to ask him what kind of son could say something like that while standing beside his father's hospital bed. Instead, I remained perfectly still, because something inside me whispered a single thought. If he's willing to say this while believing I can't hear, what else hasn't he said yet? For the next 24 hours, I forgot about my own stroke, not because I was recovering, because my son's words had become louder than the machines keeping me alive. The old man's insurance pays out double. If it looks like an accident. I replayed the sentence over and over, not trying to judge him, trying to understand him. There was a difference. Ryan wasn't reckless. He wasn't violent. He'd spent 15 years as a risk manager for an insurance company. He analyzed probabilities for a living. He hated uncertainty. So why would a man who built his career preventing fraud say something that sounded like murder? The answer had to be bigger than the sentence itself, or I desperately hoped it was. The neurologist assigned to my case introduced herself the following morning. "I'm Dr." She spoke the way experienced physicians always do. Slowly, clearly, never assuming the patient couldn't understand. "Mr. Whitmore, if you can hear me, I want you to know your family is here. We're going to give you every opportunity to recover." I wanted to thank her. Instead, only silence answered. She checked my pupils, adjusted my IV, then quietly told the nurse, "I don't think he's as disconnected as he appears." My heart almost betrayed me. The nurse asked, "What makes you think that?" "The stress monitor. What about it? Every time certain voices enter the room." She paused. "His heart reacts before the monitors show any other change." "Interesting. Very interesting." She noticed patterns, not movement, emotion. I made myself breathe slower. If she figured out I was conscious, everything would change, and I still knew almost nothing. That afternoon, my daughter Emily returned. Unlike Ryan, Emily never tried to fill silence with words. She simply sat beside me, holding my hand exactly the way Eleanor used to. I found Mom's recipe book. She laughed softly through tears. "You know, I still can't make her cinnamon bread." A small pause. "I've tried 17 times. Another quiet laugh. "She would have loved that." Then her voice became serious. "I'm scared. So scared. I don't know what's happening to Ryan." My thoughts stopped. Emily continued. "Ever since those people started calling, he hasn't been himself." "Those people?" "Who people?" She sighed. "I wish you'd tell me what was going on before the stroke." Going on before the stroke. Had something happened that I didn't even know mattered? Before I could think further, the room door opened. Emily immediately changed the subject. It was Ryan. "How's he doing?" "No change. You should go home." "I'm staying." "You've barely slept." I said I'm staying. Their conversation wasn't hostile, just careful, like two people avoiding the real discussion. Eventually Emily left. Ryan remained. For almost 10 minutes he said nothing. Then, "Dad." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry."
Sorry?
"For what?" I waited. "I should have told you sooner." Another long silence. "But I honestly thought I could fix it." "Fix what?" The room door suddenly opened again. Ryan lowered his voice instantly. "Not now." Someone entered. Heavy footsteps, expensive shoes. A deep voice I'd never heard before. "Mr. Ryan Whitmore?" "Yes, I'm Victor Hale." Victor extended his hand. "I've been trying to reach you." My heartbeat quickened. Victor, not a doctor, not family, not a friend. Who was he? Ryan sounded uncomfortable. "This isn't the place." "It became the place the moment your father collapsed." Silence. Then Victor continued. "The insurance company won't wait forever." "Insurance company?" "My insurance company." Ryan whispered sharply. "I told you not to come here." "I didn't come for your father." Another pause. "I came because of your signature." "My signature?" "No, Ryan's signature." The room suddenly felt much smaller. "What signature?" Ryan asked. "The amendment." "I never signed an amendment." Victor chuckled. "You signed something." Paper rustled. Ryan sounded genuinely confused. "That isn't..." His voice stopped. "What?" "That's not what I signed." Victor answered calmly. "It is now." Every instinct inside me screamed that I'd just heard something important, not because I understood it, because Ryan sounded afraid. Real fear, not guilt. Fear. The kind of fear people feel when they realize someone else has been using them. That evening Melissa returned alone. She believed I couldn't hear. Like everyone else, She gently adjusted my blanket before sitting beside me. After several minutes she whispered, "I knew he'd never tell me." "Tell her what? He always thinks he can protect everyone." Her breathing became uneven. "I told him not to trust Victor." Victor again. "I told him nobody gives financial advice for free." She quietly wiped away tears. "If anything happens to your father..." She stopped speaking. "Ryan will blame himself for the rest of his life." That sentence didn't fit. Not at all. A woman plotting an insurance murder doesn't cry over her husband's conscience. Unless I'd misunderstood both of them, or someone wanted me to. The following morning brought my first real danger. A rehabilitation therapist entered my room. "We're testing involuntary muscle response." She lifted my right arm, bent my wrist, then suddenly let go. My hand dropped toward my face. Instinct took over. My fingers tightened, barely, only for a fraction of a second. The therapist froze. Dr. Carter entered immediately. "What happened?" "I think he tried to stop his hand." She examined me for a long moment, then quietly said, "Interesting. What do we do?" Dr. Carter looked toward the hallway to make sure no family members were nearby. "We watch. We don't announce anything. Not yet. Not yet." Those two words echoed inside my mind. Because somewhere beyond that hospital door, someone named Victor believed Ryan had signed something he never intended to sign. And somehow, my insurance policy was connected to it. The strange thing about lying perfectly still for days, is that people eventually stop seeing you as a person. You become furniture, a machine attached to other machines, a body, not a mind. And once that happens, people begin saying things they would never say if they believed you could answer. By Tuesday morning, I knew 3 names mattered: Ryan, Victor Hale, and someone neither of them seemed willing to mention directly. The person they simply called him. Dr. Isabel Carter made her rounds just after 7. She examined my reflexes, checked my chart, and adjusted the blanket over my shoulder. She examined my reflexes, checked my chart, and adjusted the blanket over my shoulder. Then, almost casually, she spoke loudly enough for the nurse to hear. "No meaningful neurological changes." The nurse nodded. "So we'll continue the current plan?" "Yes." Dr. Carter signed the chart. Then she leaned close enough that only I could hear. "Keep listening." My heart skipped. She knew. Not everything, but enough. Without another word, she walked away. She had just become the first person in that hospital who wasn't treating me like a victim. She was treating me like a witness. Around noon, Ryan returned. He wasn't alone. Victor Hale entered behind him. For the first time, I heard the man's voice clearly, smooth, educated, the kind of voice that made promises sound like facts. "You've had 48 hours. Ryan sounded exhausted. "I told you I'm not signing anything." "You already did." "No, I signed authorization for Dad's medical claim." Victor chuckled softly. "That's what you believed." Paper slid across a table. I simply attached it to the proper file. Silence. Then Ryan whispered, "That's forgery." "No, it's efficiency." My pulse thundered. Victor continued as if he were explaining basic mathematics. "Your father purchased an enhanced accidental death rider 23 years ago." "I know. Do you?" Another pause. "The policy doubles only under very specific circumstances." "I don't care." "I think you do." Ryan's chair scraped backward. I said, "I'm done." Victor wasn't bothered. "You've already introduced me to the family. You've already provided signatures. You've already opened every door. You don't get to leave halfway through." Ryan's breathing became uneven. "I never agreed to hurt anyone." Those 7 words changed everything. Not because they proved Ryan was innocent, because they proved he had walked into something far larger than he understood. Victor lowered his voice. "So let me ask you a simple question. If your father falls down the stairs after he's discharged..." Ryan interrupted immediately. "No. Who exactly is going to question it?" I said, "No. He's 78. I'm serious." "So am I." The room became frighteningly quiet. Then Victor laughed. "I like decent people. They're always the easiest to manipulate." Footsteps. The door opened. Victor left. Ryan remained for nearly a minute. I heard nothing. Then, a sound I'll never forget. My grown son crying. Not loudly, not dramatically. The quiet kind of crying people do when they've finally admitted they're trapped. "I'm sorry, Dad." His voice cracked. "I swear, I never knew." That afternoon, Melissa arrived carrying a small backpack. She didn't realize Ryan was still sitting beside my bed. I talked to Detective Monroe. Ryan stood up so quickly his chair hit the wall. "What? I came by the house. Why didn't you call me?" "Because you stopped answering." Ryan lowered his voice. "What did you tell him?" "The truth." Silence. I told him Victor kept showing up. I told him you were terrified. I told him you've barely slept in a week. Another pause. And I gave him the emails. Emails. Ryan sounded stunned. You still had those. I save everything good. Your mother used to say. She smiled sadly. Paper remembers better than people. That sounded exactly like Eleanor. Exactly. For the first time since my stroke, hope replaced fear. Someone else was already asking questions. Late that evening, another unexpected visitor arrived. My younger brother, Thomas. We hadn't agreed on much over the years. He thought I worked too hard. I thought he worried too little. But he loved me. That much I'd never doubted. He closed the door behind him. I figured it out. Ryan looked up. Figured out what? The boat. What boat? The insurance inspection. My thoughts froze. Thomas continued. The investigator came to the marina asking strange questions. What kind of questions? He wanted photographs. Of what? The damaged navigation lights. Every memory rushed back. Sophie, the marina, Ryan telling me to repair them. The lights I'd never fixed. Thomas sighed. They weren't asking because of your stroke. They were trying to establish a pattern. Ryan whispered. Oh God. Thomas nodded slowly. Someone wanted your father's death to look predictable. Nothing made sense anymore. My stroke hadn't even happened near the lake. Why investigate the boat? Unless someone had expected me to die somewhere else. Someone had prepared an entirely different accident. That night I couldn't sleep. Not that sleep mattered anymore. I lay motionless while every conversation rearranged itself inside my head. The policy, Victor, the forged signature, the boat, the navigation lights, the insurance rider. None of these had started after my stroke. They had started before it, long before. The stroke hadn't created the conspiracy, it had interrupted it. And suddenly, my collapse looked less like bad luck and more like terrible timing. Just before midnight, Dr. Carter entered alone. She checked the hallway, closed the blinds, then placed a sealed evidence bag beneath my pillow. Inside was my cell phone, she whispered. We recovered it from your truck. A pause. It contains one voicemail. Another pause. The police couldn't unlock it. She looked directly at my closed eyes. But I have a feeling. You already know who left it. She quietly walked out. I didn't know who had called. But for the first time since waking up, I realized the truth wasn't waiting somewhere outside that hospital room. I'd carried part of it with me all along. Inside a phone no one else could open. There is a moment when fear stops growing. Not because the danger disappears, because the truth finally becomes larger than the fear. For me, that moment came when Dr. Carter slipped my phone beneath my pillow. For the first time since my stroke, I wasn't waiting for someone else to reveal the next piece of the puzzle. I already had it. I just needed a way to use it. The following morning, Dr. Carter arrived before anyone else. She performed the same neurological examination she'd done every day. Flashlight, reflex hammer, blood pressure. Then she quietly placed a laminated alphabet communication board on the bedside table. If anyone walked in, it looked like standard rehabilitation equipment. Before leaving, she whispered, "If you can control one finger, we'll let the truth speak for itself." She never asked if I was awake. She already knew. She simply gave me a way to fight. It took nearly an hour. Every movement felt like lifting concrete. My left index finger trembled as I slowly pointed toward one letter, then another, then another. The nurse wrote each one down. N-O-R-O-E. She frowned. "Monroe."
I moved again.
Yes.
Detective Monroe. Within 2 hours, Dr. Carter quietly arranged for him to visit under the pretense of reviewing my medical records. No family, no interruptions, only the detective, the doctor, and me, using the communication board one painful letter at a time. The first word I spelled was P-Allen, the second, V-I-C-M-I-L. Detective Monroe unlocked my phone using facial recognition while gently lifting my eyelid. One voicemail, received 43 minutes before my stroke. Unknown number. He pressed play. A man's nervous voice filled the room. "Whitmore, my name is Daniel Cross. I work for Meridian Insurance. I can't explain everything over the phone, but someone inside our office altered your accidental death rider 6 months ago." A pause. "You need to know. The beneficiary was never changed. The payout destination was." My heartbeat surged. The message continued. "I found documents carrying your son's digital authorization. I don't believe he knowingly signed them. I think someone bundled your signature pages into another transaction." Another breath. "If anything happens to you, don't trust Victor Hale." The recording ended. Detective Monroe didn't speak for several seconds. Neither did Dr. Carter. Finally, he said, "So your stroke may have saved your life." That afternoon, Monroe returned. This time he wasn't alone. 2 financial crimes investigators, a prosecutor, and a warrant. They hadn't come for Ryan. They'd come for Victor. Apparently, Daniel Cross hadn't only left me a voicemail, he'd also copied hundreds of internal insurance documents before disappearing. Victor Hale wasn't merely manipulating grieving families. He had spent years targeting elderly policyholders with valuable accidental death riders. He used forged digital authorizations to redirect payouts into shell corporations disguised as charitable trusts and estate management firms. Families believed they were signing routine paperwork. They weren't. Ryan had unknowingly signed one of those electronic packets while helping me update my medical records after retirement. Victor had simply inserted additional pages, exactly as Ryan claimed. That evening, Ryan entered my room alone. He looked 10 years older than he had a week earlier. "I know they arrested him." His voice shook. "I also know they think I helped him." He buried his face in his hands. "Dade, I was trying to help you simplify your paperwork. I never read every attachment. I should have. I trusted him." His shoulders trembled. "I almost got you killed." "No, Victor almost got me killed. My son had been careless. Not murderous. There was a difference, a painful difference." The next morning, Detective Monroe asked everyone to gather. Ryan, Melissa, Emily, Thomas, Dr. Carter, even several insurance investigators. Victor Hale was brought in under police escort after requesting one final opportunity to clarify the misunderstanding. He still believed he could talk his way out. He smiled when he saw me lying motionless. "Mr. Whitmore can't testify." Monroe smiled back. "We'll see." The room became silent. Dr. Carter walked to my bedside. She looked at me once. Only once. Then the moment had arrived. Slowly, I lifted my left hand. Gasps filled the room. Ryan stumbled backward. Melissa covered her mouth. Emily burst into tears. Victor's smile disappeared. I opened my eyes. His confidence vanished completely. With enormous effort, I pushed myself slightly upright. My voice sounded rough from days of silence, but every word was perfectly clear. I heard. I looked directly at Victor. Everything. No dramatic speech followed. It didn't need one. Detective Monroe simply pressed play. Victor's recorded conversations, the forged documents, Daniel Cross's voicemail, the altered insurance files, Ryan's emails, Melissa's evidence. Every independent piece fit together. No confession, no coincidence, just facts. Victor lowered his head. For the first time since entering the room, he had nothing left to say. Ryan pleaded guilty to negligent document authorization, avoided prison through full cooperation, and spent the next 3 years helping investigators expose similar fraud schemes across 4 states. Melissa never left his side. Emily became the trustee who protected every family record I'd spent decades building. As for me, recovery was slow, painfully slow, but every Saturday morning, almost a year later, 3 generations of my family stood together on that old fishing boat. The navigation lights still hadn't been replaced. I left them exactly as they were. Not because I enjoyed looking at something broken, but because they reminded me of a truth I'd almost learned too late. Sometimes the smallest overlooked detail is the light that saves your life.